Hey guys, welcome back to the Champagne Room. How you doing? So let's get right into it because you guys have been all up on my IG asking for stories. So this story is about betrayal and an unforeseen series of events that nobody saw coming. So now POTUS and FLOTUS were the all-American dream couple. I mean, talk about the picture perfect presidential vibe. Let's just call it that. Like everything physically you can think of was there. And it just so happened to be that there were also amazing people with really good hearts, like amazing people. Now, Nicole and George loved each other dearly. Like when I say they loved each other, they absolutely loved each other. They were all about their relationship. And it just so happens again that he was the president. But one of the things he told her from the beginning is that that's never going to deter this love, our relationship. I'm here with you. We are here. And she knows her husband. She knew her husband. And from when they were together, from when they first met, it was always about them. And she trusted him and she trusted that. And of course, being who she was, which was this absolutely loving, nurturing woman who just had this passion and this compassion and passion for community service and development and community projects and charity work. She took that responsibility very seriously, not because it was a requirement as the First Lady. No, it was because that was something near and dear to her heart. She believed in it. She wanted to see progress. She just wanted to see better. And she believed with her husband's status and her status, quite frankly, she could do better. She could contribute. And so she spent a lot of her time doing that community service. Now, there was an elephant in the room, which was Nicole and George didn't have children. She couldn't have children. She just couldn't. And for George, this wasn't a big deal. He loved her with all of his heart. He knew that even before he married her. And so for him, it was, Nicole, we've got each other and that's enough. But unfortunately for her, it wasn't. She thought it would be, but it wasn't. She wanted children of her own. This is really where the story kind of begins. So during one of his many presidential tours, if you will, they had gone to Cambodia. And one of the things on the itinerary was going to an orphanage. And now Nicole had gone along for the trip. And again, this was right up her alley. An orphanage, charity work, I'm there. Hands off, I'll prepare everything, I'll handle it, I'm there. And of course, her husband went along. It was good for pics. It was just campaign worthy with the greatest of respect. I mean, yes, this is who they were, but it also helped them a lot campaign wise. It made them look good. And so they went to this beautiful orphanage and they were touring, walking around, being shown the different children, shown, play areas, the kitchen, the food, the clothing, being told about the establishment, the type of charity work that's been done, introduced to the team, the staff, just the proper tour, getting a feel for this facility. And then, of course, they went into one of the nurseries and there she was, little Lily, laying in her cot, looking like the cutest little pumpkin ever. Like, just so cute with these little chubby pinkish cheeks, a cute little haircut. Sidebar, I'm actually envisioning this sticker I've seen on my WhatsApp. Little bang, chubby cheeks, pinkish cheeks, like just so cute, so cute, so cute. And of course, they fell in love with her. They fell absolutely head over heels with her. And they were like, whatever happens, she's ours. She's absolutely ours. We love her. They absolutely loved her. And so, of course, Nicole didn't have to convince George of anything. He absolutely fell for Lily just as much as she did. And within about a year of paperwork and everything else they had to do, they brought Lily back home. They welcomed her back home to the White House. And this really was Nicole's happily ever after, if you will. After her and George, of course. This was her moment of, I'm now a mother. I'm now getting to do what I love doing, which is taking care of, nurturing, but full-time now. And of course, with her work on the side. I mean, this was everything she dreamed of. This is what she wanted. And so they brought Lily in. And from the beginning, Nicole was clear, even with Lily being here, I want to make sure that she still stays connected to her roots, that she grows up understanding who she is, where she's from, speaking Khmer, just being rooted. That's the word, being rooted, being familiar, understanding her culture, understanding her language, the food, everything. She wanted that for her. So, of course, they brought in a nanny by the name of, I forgot her name, Lynn. They brought in a nanny by the name of Lynn. And guys, Lynn was just amazing. She was absolutely amazing with Lily. They built this really, really tight bond because, of course, she understood where Lily was from. She was from Cambodia as well. She had so much time for her. She had absolutely so much time for her. And this pleased Nicole because Nicole wanted her to have parts of who she really was. And so Lily coming into the family was just so perfect, but also so very needed. So she came into the family and spent a lot of time with Lily. A lot of time with Lily, teaching her the language, nose, ears, eyes, making sure that, she got to hear the language often, and whatever else, just to keep her connected. One particular night was a very difficult night for George and Nicole. George's responsibilities were getting a lot more exaggerated. There was just a lot going on. And now, of course, he's in his second term of his presidency, and his schedule has gotten grueling. It is absolutely grueling. If he isn't here, he's there. He's traveling, he's this, he's that. It's meetings, it's this, it's that. Now, before it was okay for Nicole, but now she was starting to feel the pressure of it because they had a daughter. They had a daughter, and she felt that George needed to be there to help raise Lily. And so one particular night they were in the room and they were trying their best to keep it down, but there was just so much pressure and there was so much anxiety and frustration and just this need to get it out. And Nicole says to George, I don't want you to make a move on me. I don't want you to touch me like that. Please back up. And he's like, Nicole, I don't even know what to say. I mean, every night it's the same thing. You don't want to get physical. It's just what is it? And she says, I want intimacy. I miss the intimacy. And he's like, but when I try and get physical with you, you push me back. So what are you talking about? And she makes it clear that no, not sex. I want emotional intimacy. You've gotten a lot busier. And everything that I feel you should be doing, it's just taking a back seat. The connection, it's not there anymore. It's just not there anymore. And with Lily being here, she needs more of her father, and you're just not there. You're not there. And I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what else to say, but you're not there. This is a bit of a blow for him because he always felt like she understood his position. He always felt like she understood his responsibilities. And please don't get me wrong, she did. She really, really did. The difference is now they were thinking about somebody else. And what she thought she could handle started to become very abundantly clear that no, actually, we do need you, George. We do need you present. Lily needs a father. And so he says, so what do you want me to do? Step down as president? And she's like, that's not what I said. I said that I just need more emotional intimacy. And they started going back and forth and having an argument. And she was just like, look, what I'm not going to do is argue about how I feel. So I'm going to Lily's room and I'm going to sleep. And she left. Now, of course, when she left the room, he was feeling terrible. He was really, really feeling terrible. The last thing he wanted was for her to be feeling this way. So she leaves and he sits up pretty much all night just thinking of this argument and just going over in his head what she said. And he's simmering. He's feeling terrible that he's no longer able to be there the way he wants to be there. Mind you, he had made that promise. And so that's what made him feel even more guilty, that I made this promise and I'm unable to fulfill it. I told her I was always going to be there. I was always going to support her. I would make her feel loved and wanted and prioritized. And it was kind of falling apart. She spent about the next couple of days, just over a week, sleeping in Lily's room with Lily. And then, of course, one day while the president was in the debriefing room, the press secretary walks in the middle of this meeting and whispers in his ear, Mr. President, we've got a problem. And he says, what is it? And she tells him, she whispers it in his ear and he says, I'll be there in a moment. And he goes to the room and he's like, Pamela, I don't understand. Why is this blog any different? I mean, floaters, POTUS, they're the most talked about. Why would it be any different? Why are you stressed? What is the problem? And she says, Mr. President, I really think you need to read this article, this blog post. Here's this blog entry. Trouble in paradise. Floaters and POTUS sleeping in separate rooms for the past week and a half. She needs emotional intimacy. Now, of course, any other time he would have brushed this under the rug and ignored it, but emotional intimacy, that was very specific to the conversation they had. There's a leak in the White House. There's absolutely a leak. How did they know that? How did they know that? And so he excuses Pamela and he calls Nicole and he shows her this article. And at this point, she's mortified and they're sitting there trying to figure out who could have said this, who did this, who's behind this blog. Henry, the security guard who would stand outside their bedroom. But why would he do that? And that particular night, was he close enough to hear that argument? Then there's Jake, head of security. He usually does a full sweep in the room to make sure there's no bugs, nobody's listening in on anything, there's no cameras. But he does a full sweep every day. How does this make sense? And then there's Lynn, Lily's nanny. Now, Nicole is just not convinced. She's like, look, George, I understand. You want to get to the bottom of this, but Lynn, she has been with Lily for 2 years. Why would she? No, there's just no way she could have done this. There's absolutely no way she could have done this. It makes absolutely no sense. And how would she have heard this conversation? She was in another room. Now, George's mind is going a mile a minute. He's saying, how do we know that maybe at that time when we're arguing, we hadn't switched off the baby monitor? He's just coming up with all sorts of possibilities. And she's saying, okay, well, if that's the case, how do we know it's not Jake? And he's saying, but the head of security, why would? And she was like, actually, he's the perfect person. He could definitely bug this room and we wouldn't know because he's the one who sweeps the room. So if he bugs it, we're really at his mercy. Now, he can't conceive of that. Jake has been with him for years, since he came into presidency. So why would Jake be doing this? And then Henry, they both weren't really convinced because he wouldn't have been close enough to the door to have heard. Who could it be? Who could it be? And so they're both sitting there trying to go back and forth. But what is clear is that somebody has leaked very private, real information. What was put in the article was most certainly said amongst the two of them. Things get a little quiet. Now, FLOTUS and POTUS are moving around suspiciously. They're looking at people like, can you be trusted or not? Because at this point now, very, very sensitive information about their marriage, about their relationship is coming out, and it's a violation, a deep violation. And so they're kind of trying to look out without raising too much attention. And of course, now it's the press secretary's responsibility and PR team to really just push these allegations aside and debunk them and spin the story. So of course they couldn't deny the fact that the First Lady and the President weren't sleeping in the same room anymore, but they made it about Lily. Lily needing more attention, Lily being a lot more demanding. Her sleep schedule was a bit messed up. At night she tended to be a lot more restless, and of course the President had to sleep. So the First Lady made a sacrifice to go and sleep with Lily so that she could take care of Lily and whatever else they could say. Time passed. And again, they had stayed in this state of something's not right here. Something is absolutely not right. About a month later, ting, another blog entry comes in. This time it's about a particular lunch that Lily, Lynn, the First Lady, and Jake happened to go on. Now, of course, Jake, being head of security, was there. He wasn't there having a lunch date with them. He was there to look over them. But somewhere during that lunch date, while the First Lady was carrying Lily, her hair flew into her face and Jake removed it. And so now, all of a sudden, there was this story about a suspected romance. Jake and the First Lady. Caresses her face, moves hair from her, like a sensational, salacious story insinuating that the First Lady and Jake are getting up to some things. Now, of course, that's not Nicole. That's absolutely not Nicole. So the press secretary comes back in, Pamela, and says, Mr. President, sir, we've got another problem. He sees the article and he immediately rushes over to Nicole and he was like, who was at that lunch? Now, of course, his question or his go-to was not, is this true? Because he knows Nicole. He knows his wife. He knows she wouldn't do anything to betray his trust. He's now furious because it's clear that this mole, this snitch, this person is clearly still very much in that circle and is continuing. And so she says, it was me, Jake, Lily, and Lynn. And he says, that's it. Everybody is taking a lie detector test. Lynn, Jake, and of course, for security reasons, the First Lady was, I'm happy to take one too. She submitted herself. She's nervous. Nicole is positively nervous, but not for herself. She's nervous because for some reason she knows George feels that Lynn had something to do with it. And George is usually right, but she couldn't conceive of it because she loves Lynn with all of her heart. Lynn has become so integral in their family unit, and this is somebody that Lily absolutely adores, who Lily absolutely adores. The results come back. Jake walks out of the room, the interrogation room. Paper in hand, he whispers in the president's ear. The president at this point is sitting in the room with Nicole waiting. There's tension in the air. She's looking at him. She's looking at him like, I don't even know what to say. Jake comes out of the room and he walks straight to the president. He whispers in his ear. The president gets up and marches with Jake. Nicole follows suit. They walk straight up to Lynn and they say, Lynn, you need to pack your bags and get out. Now she's heartbroken and she's standing there like, Mr. President, please, I didn't do anything, sir, please, you've got to believe me. And he says, you need to go. And she says, I didn't say anything. And he says, Lynn, you failed your test. Do you understand that? You failed your test. That's when she admits, okay, I said something to my sister, but I know for a fact she would not say anything. Please, you've got to believe me. My sister would never do anything or say anything to discredit you. She cares for this family. She cares for my job as much as I do. She would never do that. Please, you have to believe me. And he says, Lynn, there's nothing to discuss. At this point, Jake is the one now talking. And he says, Lynn, take your stuff and leave. You've got to get out. And so the First Lady and George step aside and they watch Lynn. And she says, can I at least say goodbye to Lily? And Jake makes it clear, it's absolutely not a good idea. You need to go and go now. And so she's packing her stuff. Her heart is beating. She is in so much pain, absolute pain. And she's thinking of her sister Celia, and she's so convinced there is no ways. I know my sister like the back of my hand. I know my sister. There's absolutely no ways she is behind any of this. And so she's preparing herself. And while she's packing, she's thinking, who could this be? What is going on? I need answers. What is this about? And so she packs and she packs. Celia, what have you done? What have you said? Who have you said it to? Or is it Celia?